Welcome to your dog's best friend, everybody out there watching this dog show for the umpteenth time, and we are delighted to be with you. Have you ever thought about all of our domestic breeds that we enjoy today and their genesis? Well, we have one today that's really, truly fascinating, and you're going to learn a great deal about our current dogs and where they came from. We have on the show today, the star is a Hofewart, and his name is Merlin. And I'll introduce the owner in just one moment, but this Hofewart breed has a fascinating history. I'd like you to think of castles in the forest in medieval times, and alone at night in the dark and the quiet, and the Hovewarts were used as guard and watchdogs. There is one Hofewart that I will ask our guest to expand on that saved a castle from being robbed, and I do believe that all the folks in it were killed except the young child. And I'll let Beth expand upon that because she has the history. But just think of a castle, everybody sleeping, robbers out there always robbed castles, and this one was robbed, and there was a Hofewart there. Beth Lynch, welcome to the show with Merlin.
Thank you. We're happy to be here with you.
I'd like for you to expand upon that fascinating history, real-life experience of how a Hofewart saved a young man's life.
This is the first story that we know of that's recorded about a Hofewart. It was recorded in the year 1210. And the castle was raided by Slavic invaders. They massacred everyone in the castle. They injured the Hofewart dog, but even injured, that dog took the infant child that was still alive and drug it to a neighboring castle. And the baby's life was saved. That child grew up to become very important in German law. And he wrote about the Hofewart. One of the things he put into German law was if you caused a family to lose their Hofewart dog, you had to replace the dog and pay reparations. This was part of what he did.
Really?
Yep.
That's kind of like getting a royal decree of this is the greatest dog going in Germany today.
Uh-huh.
The breed itself today, people out there, remember this is 1210 that Beth just shared, but all of your dogs, your Brittany Spaniels, your Springer Spaniels, your Cockers, your field dogs, your working dogs, your water dogs, they all came from back then in medieval history, and they were working dogs. They had jobs, not like our dogs of today. And if they didn't do their jobs, somebody died, and also there was no meat on the table because they took care of putting meat on the table instead of veggies. About 1473 to 1500, Beth, there were 5 noble breeds. I love the word noble. And this is one of the noble breeds.
That's correct.
Would you expand on that? How does that work, noble breeds?
I don't know a whole lot of history on that, but I do know that every time you read a history of the Hofelwarts, one of the things that comes up was in 1473, there was a declaration made about the noble breeds, and Hofewart was one of the 5 on that list.
That is a marvelous word, noble. Now, coming from Germany, there are other dogs that I'm sure were intermixed breed-wise to produce a Hofewart, interbreeding to make one breed of dog. Would that be a reasonable conclusion?
Well, what happened is there were the original Hofewarts, like the one that was written about in 1210. Those dogs were almost completely lost in the early 20th century, but the Koenig family went to through the Black Forest, visiting farms and pulling out all of the Hofewarts that they could find. And then they used dogs that were representative of the breed. Now, unlike a lot of American breeding where we breed for looks, that was not their concern. They did end up with a really gorgeous dog.
Right.
But what they were breeding for was temperament, intelligence, and a really unusual trait to breed for. They bred the dogs to make independent decisions. This is going to be really important in a few minutes when we talk about temperament. But the dogs were chosen to get that intelligence and independent decisions. Some of the breeds that were used were the Hungarian Kuvas, the Newfoundland, the German Shepherd, the Labrador, the Bernese Mountain Dog, and even the African wild dog.
Wow. I'm familiar with the African wild dogs from my studies in ethology and animal behavior. I can't feature an African wild dog being even allowing itself to be bred. They are mighty, mighty hunters. what we're teaching the public right now is that what we see today in our Springers and our German Shepherds was not so in medieval times.
Right.
They were people breeding them for workability and, as you say, make independent decisions. So we'll talk about temperament, because that was an individual decision on that ancient Hoverwart's part.
Yes.
To rescue that child and drag him to another castle. Nobody trained him to do that.
Nobody trained him to do that. Nobody expected that that situation would happen. And at that point, anyone who could have commanded the dog was already either dead or too injured to have an influence on the dog. The dog looked at that situation and made a decision. I've had a similar, not anywhere near as dramatic, experience with Merlin. Merlin is trained to help me get up the stairs in my house because I have some joint issues. One day when he was helping me up the stairs, I had a dizzy spell. We've never worked with him on dizzy spells. He immediately body checked me against the wall and held me until I was over the dizzy spell. This wasn't something I trained him to do.
Correct. He smelled your scent discrimination. He scent discriminated the fact that your brain was sending out new signals, which in turn produce pheromone skin gases, and that happens in a nanosecond. But I'm so, this is the first time I've heard this actually with a person, other than those who are trained to do so. That's fascinating that he made that decision and body checked you. The ability to do that, to reason, is kind of a no-no topic in medical history or in the field of medicine and doctors. But you know they do, and I know they do, and every trainer out there knows they do. And did you overcome your dizzy spell? Did you lean on him so and then finally get up the steps?
In that case, I didn't even need to lean on him. He was using his shoulder to hold me against the wall. So normally I use his shoulders. Merlin, up. Are you sleeping? Come on. Would you get up, please?
You can stand. You can get up if you want.
He's going to relax and enjoy the show.
Okay, that's fine. I'd like to expand upon the almost decimation of the breed. I imagine in the early 1900s, maybe even, let's say, World War II, which is I'm sure the war had something to do with that decimation of the breed.
Yeah, they were used heavily as war dogs because of their special attributes. And as a result, the breed was almost completely wiped out. The Koenig family, the same family that had been responsible for recreating the breed in the early 1900s, brought the breed back yet again, to the point that in 1922 they were first officially recognized as a breed and registered.
When the Koenig family was doing this, did they use other breeds like the Leonbergers and the German Shepherds to reconstitute the Hoverwart?
They'd use as many Hoverwarts as they could get, and where they needed to have it. You weren't going to take that off the table, were you? You wouldn't do that. Leave it. They used other breeds, and Merlin. They do think for themselves.
He made an independent decision there, Beth.
He made an independent decision that Mom was distracted.
Yeah.
And now we're going to go to the gold standard treats. They used other breeds as much as they had to, but they did everything they could to keep the validity of what the breed is about.
Now, you just used two issues with the dog, two areas of the dog's temperament and behavior that I'd like you to expand on. You just said leave it, and he would have, except he said, well, I'm a dog and I'm going to get that thing. But I do know that under certain circumstances, when you say leave it, he will leave it. And you are not in a position here to reinforce it.
Right.
I'd like you to explain that one. And then when we met in the studio and I came through the door, you said to me something about if he's between me and you, he's going on guard. But if you're close to me, just expand upon that one so the public can understand. These dogs make decisions.
Right. These dogs make their own decisions. You teach an excellent approach to introducing a dog where you shake the person's hand first, have that person then offer the hand with your aroma. I do a very similar thing. The difference, because Hoverwarts are naturally protective and because they make their own decisions, I make sure that he is either beside me or behind me when I do an introduction.
Really?
If he is in between us, the natural instinct is that he is going to protect me.
Yes.
I'll also bring in with this part of the intelligence of the breed. You're going to ground us if I don't give you the treat. Watch me. Watch. Take it. I had a previous Hofart that we were doing Schutzen training with, and one of the elements of Schutzen training is protection. So the Schutzen trainer used an approach that I really don't like, which is tying the dog and then teasing outside of the range of the line. And while I'm mentioning that, I'll mention this is why you don't want to tie your dog in the yard. You will get an aggressive dog because they will view people as walking by as teasing them. But anyway, he was teasing the dog. Well, the dog rushed him once, rushed him twice, figured out where the end of the rope was, and sat down and watched him. And the trainer's out there going, ee, making a fool of himself, and the dog's like, yeah, really? The trainer looked at me and he said, this dog will never be a protection dog. He doesn't have the instinct. I said, this dog is smart enough to know where the end of the line is.
Nice.
He pushed me off, walked away. A couple weeks later, he walked up behind me in the parking lot. The dog was already out of the car. I had my head in the car pulling out stuff. And as he walked up behind me, he got the surprise of finding himself instantly pinned against my car with a paw on each shoulder and a dog barking in his face. Dog did not hurt him, but it was really, really clear he wasn't going anywhere.
He had done some reasoning when he was on the line, the tease line, and the agitator was outside the length of the tease line. He made a decision, you're outside the length, so I'm not going to charge you this time. But when he came up behind you, he pinned that guy right to the car.
Yep.
And that were two independent decisions that the dog made. It's very important, folks out there, to understand that when you own a dog like a Hovevart or a Hovevart itself, that you've got one cracking breed on your hands.
Oh, yeah. And one thing to be aware of, people think, smart dog, I want a smart dog, they're going to be easy to train.
Yes.
Smart dogs are not easier to train. Smart dogs are frequently much more difficult to train because they're going to think for themselves. Hofavarts come in 3 colors, black, blonde, and black and tan. Many people look at the blondes and go, oh, they're just like a golden. My response to that is the difference is when you ask a golden to do something, they say, how do I do it perfectly? When you ask a Hofevart to do something, they said, why should I do that? You'll notice
that is great.
That I can work with hand or verbal
yes, I have
signals
noticed that.
with him.
The viewers are watching it also. They're watching these decisions.
And he's very responsive. This doesn't happen by accident. This happens by us training every single day. And it's not that I do a 15-minute training segment a day. It's during our constant life. When we're sitting at home, if he's near me, I'm very likely going to give him a command. He may get treats, he may not. He loves to show off for people, don't you?
Now let's talk about temperament because it's a most important consideration. And you guys have been breeding for it for years, and this is the result of it. The American Kennel Club, of course, registers dogs, and you get a piece of paper through the mail that says, we know your dog is out there. But that's not temperament, that's a piece of paper. And the American Kennel Club is not involved with, to the best of my awareness, of what's the temperament of this dog. So would you talk about that a little bit?
American Kennel Club looks almost extensively at looks and conformation. They do very little with temperament. And my own experience, we got forced to have the breed with a, I've forgotten what it's called, a restricted recognition by the AKC that we actually didn't want it to have, but somebody pushed us into that situation. The fact that AKC has papers on a dog doesn't mean anything other than that somebody sent a check and registration papers into AKC.
We are winding down the show right now, Beth. We're about to go to the end of the show. The viewing public, this is a magnificent breed of dog. It is a very special kind of dog, and you want to be sure that you're talking to reputable breeders and folks like Beth Rescue and who are involved every day, and that you do due diligence when you make a contact if you want to purchase a Hovevart. Thank you so much, Beth, for a really, really wonderful show. And never will I forget the experience in 1210 of this breed of dog saving a young child from a castle being plundered and taking it to another castle. That's thinking. That's animal thinking. Welcome back to your dog's best friend, Merlin. Merlin is our dog today, the same as the first part of the show, folks. This dog deserves a long time teaching and training on the television. He is a Hovevart, and the most fantastic part of his little noggin up here, his brain, is that the earliest recorded history of the independent work of these dogs, the Hovevarts, is in the early 1200s. And that is when we lived in castles. Barons lived in castles, where the expression land barrel comes from, land baron. And the Hovevart was an independent thinking guard dog. And there is a recorded history of one of these breeds alerting a castle owner to a raid by infidels out there. He saved the entire family, and they all came out safe thanks to this dog, Hovevart, and our trainer and owner, Beth. Welcome back, Beth.
Glad to be back.
Would like to talk a little bit about independent thinking. I think it's one of the most important concepts of the innate behavior of this breed of dog. 1200, early 1200s is a long time. The Springer Spaniels and the German Shepherds weren't thought of at that time, but the Hovevart was. And independent thinking, would you give owners an idea of independent thinking and why this is a real special dog before you buy one?
Well, independent thinking means, I like to compare, a lot of people like to compare them to golden retrievers because the blondes look like goldens. I tell people the difference is when you tell a golden retriever to do something, they try to figure out how to do it best. When you ask a Hovevart to do something, they ask why they should do it. Literally, if I give him a command, if the command is not really, really thoroughly trained, he'll look around to determine whether that is the best move for him at the moment.
Really?
Really.
Suppose an owner then leaves one of these breeds of dogs in a garage and the workmen are scheduled to come. How's that going to work out with the dog is thinking like the castle owners, I got to get these people out of this castle. There were infidels raiding it. Now we're in the year 2016 and someone purchases a Hovevart and leaves it in a garage with workmen coming and no one's there. Or perhaps someone is there. What's this dog going to do?
He's actually probably going to be more aggressive if someone is there. He's more concerned about protecting the people than the castle. However, we have had breeders and some trainers who have done exactly that. Left the dog in the garage, scheduled a workman to come. The dog evaluates, decides the workman doesn't belong there. He does a bark. His first choice is to bark and hold. If the person continues, then he will bite. He's not an attack dog. A lot of people think guarding means attacking. To a Hovevart, guarding means bark and hold, which means warn the owners and keep the person where they are. They will frequently take a hold of the person's arm with their mouth and try to move the person to a position that they feel is okay. But if they have to, they will bite, and that has happened.
This is all innate. It's innate within the breed itself.
Correct.
And therefore there is a caution that an owner should know about and that a breeder or trainer should train about. All right, we have a Hovevart in the home now, and a professional trainer is hired to train the dog to come sit and down. We have an intelligent, thinking dog that can do activities on his own. And what kind of problems would this dog present to a trainer who's used to conditioned behavior and just do it, come sit down, but we have an intelligent dog? What's going to happen there?
The dog is going to evaluate, unless the dog is trained to what I call automatic level, the dog is going to evaluate whether that is the most reasonable thing to do in the moment. So if I am giving him a command and my husband is getting ready to walk out the back door, he will evaluate whether he's better off going with my husband or paying attention to me. And I address that by making training so fun and so frequent that he automatically listens to me.
Now, right now we have you teaching the folks out there about independent, intelligent thinking dog. I do love the part where the dog will hold, but there's no pressure.
There's no pressure.
It's a hold, and the inclination is just to get the intruder out of the house.
Absolutely.
Because you don't belong here. Now let's get into children in the house with the owners. How are these dogs with children? The respondents really want to know that one. And would you leave this dog alone with the child in the house while mom and dad are out?
First of all, I would never leave any dog with any young child. Dogs are animals. Children will experiment and play. Merlin, come here.
There he comes.
I can pull his ears, but I know exactly how hard I'm pulling him and what he likes. A child can come up and grab his ear or poke his eye. He's an animal. He will bite. Any dog will do that. Now, having said that, if they're socialized with that child, and the child is socialized to how to behave with the dog, they're excellent together. These dogs love children if they've been socialized to them. If you have a Hofwart that's never met a child, like any other dog that's never met a child, he'll have a bad reaction. He doesn't understand what a child is.
So true, and why the child is doing what it's doing.
Yes.
Now, the question of temperament arises, which I think the audience can see right now. This dog has a lovely temperament, absolutely beautiful temperament, and you also are different colors, aren't you, besides being black and brown like you are right now. So let us take a dog being left alone at home with no stimulation in the environment. What we have is what I know to be solitary confinement.
Mm-hmm.
I do not mean I've experienced it. But a dog in a house alone, nothing to smell, nothing to hear, nothing to taste, nothing to chew, no stimulation, no one to touch. How do you counsel dog owners on that, please?
Well, first of all, if I leave him alone without enough stimulation, he will open drawers or doors and see what's in there to play with. So I may find almost anything chewed up. Even when I was at home with a dog that got bored, he had a nice smooth tile floor. He had a great big water dish. He walked over to the water dish. Merlin, over here. Hey, you. I know, he's interesting, isn't he?
Yes.
Walked over to the water dish, scooped the water out, walked across the room, took a running start, and did a slide through the water.
Really?
Then walked back across the room and did it again. To this day, I cannot figure out how a dog would know to do that. But he made his own toy. And
Yes, he did.
Hofwarts will do things like that. Ideally, you have a lot of toys. He has a huge trash can full of toys, and when he gets bored, he will frequently, if he's not going through my drawers, go through his trash can full of toys and pick out the toy he wants, and he alternates toys.
Now we have something like a super intelligent, college-trained dog here.
Yes.
I believe that he did that. He made his own game. Yes, dogs do make their own game, but it's incredible what he did with the water.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an opossum story that you're going to share with us about Merlin. What would be that opossum story?
Well, this is actually about getting them trained to automatic. Two commands that I always recommend with Hofwarts are cage, and cage is not the same as a kennel up command. For me, cage is like many people use place, and we use it as a big game, so when I give him the command, which I don't want to say it too loud here, because
Right.
if I give it the way I give it at home, he's going to look around for his cage. We run to the cage together, throw a treat in, he gets his treat, he gets to come back out. And any time of the day, any place in the house, I'll yell the cage command, he'll run to his cage.
And that is a large crate?
That's a large
very
crate.
big one.
It's a big crate.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of crate I'd kennel him in.
Yes.
But I never close the door on the cage command. It's a timeout. And it's done primarily as a game with a purpose. He's also taught leave it, which I think everybody who's done anything with a dog should have done leave it. So we're out in the yard. It's dusk. I turn around and he has a baby possum in his mouth. Not the kind of thing you really want to encounter, and you certainly don't want to try to go grab a live possum out of a dog's mouth. I looked at him and I said, Merlin, drop it, leave it. Possum dropped to the ground. Cage. He ran in the house. I turned to my husband and I said, go in the house, close your dog door on the way in, give him his treats, play with him while I figure out how to get the possum out of the yard. But this is a dog that was trained so thoroughly that instead of doing his instinct of thinking about whether he wanted to give up the possum, we play this game every day. Part of the game is you drop what's in your mouth, you run to your cage. So he did.
Wonderful, and he did that with a live animal in his mouth, and he was just holding, as in, you're invading my territory, but I'm not going to bite or eat you. That's okay. Now, we're into training a little bit, so there was a few exercises that you demonstrated prior to the show. Would you show the folks what you have trained with Merlin? And this is not a trick dog, folks. This is not a stage dog nor a Hollywood dog.
Let's take
It's a
this
pet
off,
dog.
'cause that confuses you. Merlin, back. Back. Sit. Watch me. Merlin, watch. Up. Stay. Watch me. Down. Up. Good boy. Sit. Good boy, come on. Good boy, good boy, good boy. What a
And
good
then we
boy.
have the positive reinforcement,
boy.
which is one of the most important parts
Yeah,
of what
it's
you
one of
just
your
saw,
favorite.
is the positive reinforcement. And that is that Beth touched, ate, the dog was touched, the dog ate, the dog tasted, there's tactile going on now, there was an audible and there's a visual, and all 5 senses were satisfied
Yep.
with that 1 to 2 seconds of positive reinforcement. Now, everybody wants to know, how long did it take you to train him to do that?
I'm still doing it.
You're still doing it. The lesson there is you never stop training with your dogs. One of my favorite questions to ask dog owners when they ask me, how long will it take my dog to learn to come and sit and down, I respond with a question. Do you have children? Yes. When did you stop training them? Oh. Then the question, 18 years, 19 years, when did you stop training? You never stop training. It's an act in progress every day, folks. Those were not tricks. That was responding to positive reinforcement and signals. Do we have time for the waterboarding story?
The waterboarding story was the water
We got
dish
about
story.
2 minutes. We got 1 minute
The
left.
waterboarding was the water dish.
Oh, that was the water dish.
That
Thank you
was the
very
water
much.
dish.
We're going to close out with that we have a very special breed of dog here, folks, the Hope of Art. And seldom, if ever, do I use the expression noble for a breed, because noble generally expresses a human characteristic. But this is a noble bred dog, bred to help the nobles in the 1200s to protect their castles from the infidels. His name is Merlin. He's a Hope of Art. Right now, he's doing a high five, and he's trusting he's going to get a little liver cube for that, and who knows, he might do it. An independent dog, and here we go, folks. We are winding down. He's going to get something there for his show today.